Well, you graded the bullpen and you shared your thoughts on how they can improve. So let's get to what you shared right now. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And you can help out the show in a few ways. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscription button to become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're listening on the audio side or you're watching on the video side, make sure that you come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's the best way to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
My name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike, we're back at it again with the 2023 Angels roster report card. Today, it's going to be the bullpen, and we had over 350 responses to our survey where you guys went in and graded each of these players 0 to 4, and then we gave them a letter grade based on the scale. Some people asking, what scale are you using? Well, it's 0 to 4. It's A through F. That's what it is.
There's our own.
No, I got it online, and there's a spot for an A+, so it pushes everything down. That's
Love
why.
it.
So
Love it.
We want to get right into it so that we can make sure we get to everything today. And first up, Mike, there's a lot of youngsters in this bullpen. In fact, one of the youngsters that you and I have been excited about since last season, honestly, and excited to see him this year was Ben Joyce. Joyce, he received a score, again, from 0 to 4. He got a 2.63 grade. That's good for a B-. Some of the frequent comments that were given to us, gas, which I loved, future closer, and then needs control. So what are your thoughts there on Ben Joyce?
Yeah, the control piece is going to be the piece that is going to be something he has to get better in, because we saw last year and in the minor leagues as well, where he really struggled in a few of his outings. And then he would have outings where he would be completely dominant, and he would have times where he would strike out all the batters and look fantastic. And then he would have times where he would walk 4 or 5 guys and give up a couple of hits and couldn't get out of an inning. I think, Johnny, the guy that we're hoping that he is the guy when we were in the midst of a playoff run, and I believe it was against maybe Texas. I could be wrong, but he came in and it was a close game, and he just blew away each of the batters. And I think that that's the guy that he is. And if he can figure out his secondary pitch, or maybe have a secondary pitch, I think he could be somebody that will be really tough coming out of the bullpen.
It's that fastball slider combination, and he just needs to work on that slider a little bit more. Mike, I'm interested. I know a lot of people want to see him as the closer in the future.
Yeah.
I'm interested in his ability to go back-to-back days, something we haven't really seen yet out of Ben Joyce, something that he really hasn't even done in his college days too. So in the next year, I think that we're going to see more Ben Joyce, and hopefully he'll get an opportunity to go back-to-back days just to see what the Angels have in him. Speaking of some really exciting young talent that we are both thrilled to see, that's Sam Bachman. Sam Bachman received a score of 2.26. That's good for a C letter grade. Some of the comments here, Mike: bright future starter, and stay healthy. Stay healthy, please. That's all we want from Sam Bachman. I agree on the future starter thing. I know that he was out of the bullpen this year, but I think he might have the same path as Chase Silseth and end up being in the starting rotation. I know that he's figured to be a bullpen guy since he was signed, but he also has the ability to be in the rotation. I'd like to see it. How about you?
Yeah, I'd like to see him in the rotation. I don't know if it will be for 2024. I think that he actually would be a really good piece in the bullpen, because we're not really sure who's going to be in that bullpen. And if they go and make some deals and bring in some guys or sign some free agents, that's still up in the air. But I think that he performed well in the bullpen. And if he does that in 2024, I'd love to see him there. But I do think that his future is in the starting rotation.
Absolutely. Another guy that was really impressive this season, Jose Soriano, a 2.39 score, ended up receiving a C+. People said quality bullpen arm, promising future, and also, back to that issue, needs better control. And I think I agree on all three of those points. I think that he was somebody who was pleasantly surprising out of the bullpen, a young guy that can be part of the bullpen for a long time. But there were moments where the walks would get to him and he just wasn't able to locate while he was coming out of the pen. So I think Jose Soriano is definitely somebody that can build upon what he established this year and take that into 2024.
Yeah, my fan heart wants to give him a B just because I think he really outperformed what we were expecting from him, because we really didn't have any expectations. And so him coming in and handling the bullpen like he did was fantastic. But I think that the C+ grade is a grade that says, yeah, he's right in the middle. He wasn't terrible and he wasn't super great. And I think that this is somebody, if we can count on him next season, he could be somebody that would line himself up with Joyce, with Bachman, and with Estevez at the end of this bullpen. And I think he could be a solid guy. And maybe if Estevez isn't, going to close that night, I can see Soriano being that guy, because I don't think that Joyce is ready for that.
You know what's funny? You said that about his C+ grade. I feel like, to me, I would prefer giving him something like a B-, because I think there was a lot more good than bad. I still understand that there was some control stuff there, but I think I'm with you. I think that if this were my personal grades, I might have done like a B-. But again, 350 plus people all compiled their grades together for this. And so we are really grateful for that, to get your opinions and insight. Andrew Wantz, Mike, somebody that you and I had been pretty high on since like 2021, when him and Austin Warren both came up around the same time. I think it's easy to get those two confused sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
But Andrew Wantz really showed us something last season. In fact, he was part of this bullpen from opening day until he started to kind of struggle again. He got a 1.74 score. That's good for a D grade. I was actually kind of surprised to see this. A lot of comments all said meh.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you might define his season. Up and down was another comment that was common. And then just good bullpen depth. Not somebody that you can go to all the time, but if you need to send somebody down to give them some rest, you can call up Andrew Wantz to take their place. Thoughts on Andrew Wantz here?
Yeah, he's the epitome of, hey, we need a fresh arm, or it's a doubleheader. Let's bring up that extra guy, right?
Yeah,
So I didn't see anything this year that would make me go, man, I hope that he can be in this bullpen. I don't think that he is somebody that we can count on. I actually prefer Austin Warren over Andrew Wantz, because Warren has at least outperformed Wantz. They haven't done great, either one of them. But I think that Wantz really had a chance this year to prove himself and didn't prove himself, really fell flat.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to see Austin Warren probably till 2025, maybe, because of the Tommy John surgery. Right. So that's really unfortunate there. Jose Marte, Mike, another young arm that can throw really, really hard, but unfortunately, his control issues got to him. He's got a score of a 1.31. That was also good for a D grade. Control issues were a common theme among our comments. Somebody said, let him cook in AAA. Let him, because he came back from injury and really came right up to the team right away. Let him cook and get some things right in AAA and call him up when you need him. And then on that same note, a lot of comments around he could use some good coaching. He could use some good guidance when it comes to coming out of the pen. What do you say? He
feels like an Elvis Peguero part 2.
Totally.
Right? He feels like that type of pitcher where you're like, man,
and the Brewers got something out of him,
Yes.
The stuff is there.
I want this guy to be good. And I don't know what it is about Jose Marte, but I've been a fan and I want him to be really good. And I think he can be really good. And I like his stuff. He fits in those categories of like a Joe Adell or a Jordan Adams. He's super athletic and he's got this really great stuff and he can perform, you're like, ooh, man, I'm impressed by him in spring training, right? But then when it comes to the actual games, you go, gosh, man, how come this guy can't figure it out? And I think that the note on needs coaching, I think is totally appropriate, because in each of these guys, really, they need somebody that's going to help them with extension, John, like you pointed out. They've also, they need pitch efficiency. And I think that that's the thing that this organization lacks overall. And Jose Marte is an example of that. And he had a lot of games where I know he was left in at the end of the year, but he had a lot of games where suddenly it's 4 runs on the board and he struck out 3, but he gave up 4 runs, or he gave up 6 hits. Right. And it was just like, man, bro, you fell apart in that inning. And then there was a couple of outings where it was pretty impressive. And hey, this guy could be maybe a 5th inning, 6th inning guy if the starter doesn't go that deep into the game. But there's nothing about him that stands out outside of, man, I just really want him to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, coming up, we've got bullpen report cards for the guys who were here for a hot minute and then they were gone. And then, what did you guys give Carlos Estevez, considering his great start to the season and then kind of falling off when the moment really mattered? Well, we're going to talk about all of that coming right up.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by Jase Medical. You can take control of your medical care and treatment with the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, you can jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. Plus, you get ongoing care from their physicians at any treatment for any treatment-related questions. The Jase case is doctor-created, doctor recommended. You don't have to be caught off guard or unprepared in emergencies. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And Jase handles everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. You can get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics from Jase Medical by using our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout when you go to jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Hey, Locked On Everydayers, don't forget that we have a Fan Mail Friday coming up, and we'd love to get your voicemails, your comments, and your questions. Best way you can do that, hit us up at Locked On Angels on Twitter or at Super Halo Bros on Instagram. You can also give us a call on our voicemail line, which is in the episode description. And if you're watching on YouTube, comment below, or if you're on the audio side, come on over to YouTube, put your comment in, let us know it's for Fan Mail Friday. We'd love to hear from you there.
All right, Johnny, we talk about the bullpen and our Locked On Everydayers graded the bullpen. This segment is called they were here and then they were gone, right?
Yes.
They were here for a bit and then they completely disappeared for a lot of different reasons. So let's start, Johnny, with Reynaldo Lopez.
Yeah, Reynaldo Lopez came over in that trade with Lucas Giolito. Mike, I have to agree with some of the comments here. First, I'll give you the score, 2.41 for Reynaldo Lopez. That was a C+. I think personally, I would have rated him a little higher, maybe in the B range. But I did like some of the comments here. Best trade pickup, I think, at the deadline. Yes, he absolutely was. He was a flamethrower. Somebody said, a lot of people said, bring him back for the bullpen next season. I could see that happening, couldn't you?
Yeah, I'd love to have him back. And we didn't get really a chance to see what he can do because he wasn't here for very long and we weren't in it for very long. But I think he's somebody that could flip-flop with Estevez at the back of this bullpen. And that was something that they were going to do with Quijada at the beginning of the year. And then he got hurt. And so I think that could possibly be a really big help for Estevez in 2024. Having somebody that, if Carlos isn't ready or if he's struggling, even if he's got to save, right? Yeah, bring somebody else in and have him ready to go. And Reynaldo Lopez had some really good outings. Again, we didn't get to see him for very long, and some of his numbers are a little bit concerning. His ERA was high and his FIP was kind of high, and so I think that who he actually is somebody we'll have to discover next season. But I would not be opposed to bringing him back. I think he'd be a great asset to this bullpen.
Mike, another guy who was here and gone was Dominic Leone. Look at that photo of him fired up right there, because he had, according to the comments, one good moment, and that was getting us out of a jam. But his score was a 1.48. That was good for a D letter grade. Really wasn't a lot of Dominic Leone this season. I think it was something like 11 games. He had a lot of walks, Mike. He was issuing a lot of free passes out there. But again, a D letter grade. One good moment was kind of the common theme among the comments. A lot of people said, Jeremiah Jackson. He got rid of Jeremiah Jackson, who, might be a Kyron Paris type, a Jordan Adams type, a Joe Adell type, where it's like, well, let's see how they actually do at MLB. But Jeremiah Jackson's somebody we've heard about for a long time, and we didn't really get to see him play at the major league level. So I understand the disappointment there. I like this comment a lot, and it feels like it sums up him and Reynaldo Lopez. Good arm, bad timing. What do you say about that?
Very true. We had some Locked On Mets everydayers that reached out to us to give us some insight into Dominic Leone, and a lot of them were like, Good luck, right? And so when he came, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great, right?
Well, there
and
was a couple times I said he was done at Leon because he came out of
Yes.
the bullpen and looked really good.
Yeah.
But again, it was just a too little too late for the Halos.
The hard part is that we were out of it, right? And
Yeah.
we sank really, really fast. And when we talk about Jeremiah Jackson and we talk about Kai Bush and Edgar Caro, all of those guys, like it wouldn't be as painful, but because we had these guys for 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Yeah,
and
3
then
weeks.
and then we waived them all. That's what makes it really painful because we essentially just lost players off of our team. And that's the hard part, especially with names that we've heard for so long. And what could they have been? Well, we'll never know. My gut says, Johnny, that somebody like a Jeremiah Jackson isn't going to be super impressive. I think that he'll have moments, but I think he's not going to be super impressive because the Angels minor leagues haven't been super impressive. And I think the ones that have made it to the major leagues are the ones that we can really be excited about.
Yeah, or Kyle Bradish over with the Orioles on a World Series or a playoff team.
Yeah.
Jacob Webb, speaking of Orioles and playoffs and former Halos on the Orioles, Jacob Webb was here for a hot minute. He had a 1.78 score. He got a grade of a D+. So people said like random DFA, like surprising DFA. The Angels should have kept him. And then somebody said that Texas game, and I believe that's where the photo comes from, is that series in Texas that just felt so important, Mike.
Yep.
When we took 3 out of 4 from the Rangers. Was that May, I believe? It was May or maybe early June, but Jacob Webb really saved that game. I think he came in with a bases loaded situation and got the Halos out of it. Really exciting to see. Really kind of confused at why the Angels DFA'd him, not to say that he probably wouldn't have been let go at the end of the season anyway because of all the salary shedding they were doing. But so far, he's come over to the Orioles and performed pretty well for them. I think he had struggled in a playoff game. Maybe it was the first Rangers-Orioles game, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it have been a regular season game. But again, Jacob Webb, no longer with the team, here for a hot minute. What are your thoughts on Jacob Webb?
Yeah, it was very random that they let him go. And I was curious as to why, because he was a really good bullpen piece. And so maybe it was a salary dump. I'm not really sure. Maybe they just wanted him to go to a playoff team. Who knows? But I would love to have this guy back because I don't think that the D+ grade feels really low to me. I think I would give him a high C and maybe even a B-. But I think a high C+ would be my grade for him because he had a pretty good year and it was that Texas game that really caught our attention, right? And he came in and did an admirable job. Wasn't perfect, but this Angel bullpen isn't perfect. And so I really like Jacob Webb.
Yeah, that's the thing about relievers is they're so finicky. They're hot and they're cold, and you're going to get everything in between. So it's really hard to rate somebody unless they're solid all season long, right? Chris Davinsky was somebody who was a nice surprise for us for a while. He had a 1.86 score with a D+ grade. Some of the main comments were mixed results. He had glimpses of good, and he certainly had a moment with the Halos there for a while. It looked like he was getting back to that playoff Houston Astros form that he was in. And you and I did a deep dive into him and realized that like he was kind of ahead of the curve back in 2017 when he, was a lot more dominant than the rest of the league in the way that his pitches moved and his strikeout rate and things like that. He's struggled over the last few years, but for a good while there, he was really good for us until he wasn't really.
Yeah. Dude gets hurt. And then when he comes back, did he come back? I think he came back and wasn't great. And so, but he had like that glimpse where you're pretty confident when he came in that he was going to get an out. And I think he had a consecutive streak of how many people he retired in a row. And it was kind of like under the radar. And so there was some excitement about Davinsky and high five to Perry for identifying like, this is a guy to go and get. But with guys like that, what we experience is that they're hot for a minute, but then they go back and regress to who they were. And that seems to be what happened with Davinsky this season.
Absolutely. Last disappointment here and there and suddenly gone. Tucker Davidson was here for 18 games this season. Of course, we got him in the Raisel Iglesias trade, 0.99. So didn't quite get to the D-. He got a grade of an F. Some of the comments there are glad he's gone. Bad move, Perry. And then this one, Mike, I put on here specifically because it really intrigued me. A 3.35 FIP, fielding independent pitching. And if you're wondering if that's good or bad, well, let me tell you that Shohei had a 4 FIP this
Wow.
season. And so somehow Tucker Davidson had a really terrific FIP, but the results just weren't there, right?
Yeah, he was somebody that was so inconsistent, and I think that they held on to him for as long as they did because they needed to hang on to the pieces that they traded Rysel for. And again, this is another one of those trades that just is a bad mark for Perry because we don't have any of the players that we traded away a really good closer for. And gosh, that can't continue, right? And so I can understand why people are frustrated with Perry Manassian because there are a lot of black marks on his record, right? Like a lot of that's not good. And so I think Tucker Davidson fits into that category. This guy feels like, man, if he figured it out, he'd be a really great pitcher, but he just seemed like he couldn't figure it out, or it's the bad luck behind him because his FIP was really great.
Right. Well, and you and I have explained before that obviously it's never fun to do a salary dump, but when you consider the fact that Rysel Iglesias was worth probably pick a pair of players on the Angels like Urshela and Renfroe or Estevez and Matt Moore, that's the cost of one Rysel Iglesias. So there's a trade-off there, but again, it does kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. October baseball is back, and you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Join FanDuel today, and you'll get started with a $2,000 bonus bet guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create your new account. Then you can get in on all the action from the first pitch to the final out. You can bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to see who gets the W, you can predict what will happen in the next at bat with quick bets. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. You can step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
$200, not $2,000. That's what he said the first time. Everyone's like, $2,000.
$100.
$200. Yes. Thank you, FanDuel, for this special offer. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Alrighty, Mike. These are the guys in the bullpen who were kind of staples of the bullpen all season long, whether they were here and they were here all through 2023, or maybe some of them moved on, or even some that were kind of here and there and maybe injured every now and then or down in the minor leagues. The first one we're going to start with, though, and this is the big kahuna of this episode, Carlos Estevez. Here we go, a 2.76 score. He received a B grade. Some of the main comments here were a tale of two halves, which I think is a great point. Needs more pitches, which I also think is a great point. I think that he was starting to get figured out a little bit once the implosion started to happen a little bit. And somebody said, no Naruto run. He said he was going to win the playoffs and then do the Naruto arms back. You might know it as like the Sonic the Hedgehog run. But he said he was going to do the Naruto run when the Angels made the playoffs. Unfortunately, that did not happen.
No.
Mike, talk about Carlos Estevez.
He said that he didn't adjust his in-between outings routine until later on because he was trying to, quote, save some of his bullets. And so that was part of the reason why he struggled in the second half. And so he did a lot of dry throws, but he learned how to be a closer. And he learned what he needs to do for next season. And so perhaps next season we get a full season of Carlos Estevez instead of a first half Carlos Estevez. And I think that there has to be some wiggle room for guys trying to figure out what it means to be a closer. And he figured that out this year. Now, application is different than identification, right? And so he has to apply it if he's going to be successful in 2024. And I wouldn't mind having him in the back of the bullpen, but if I'm Perry, I'm going to get a Ronaldo Lopez, or I'm preparing somebody else to help offset Carlos Estevez and give whoever the new manager is the freedom to be able to pick from one or two guys.
You always have these great phrases. Identification is not application. You always got this good stuff. People, write this down, people. This is good stuff.
Tweet that.
All right. Hey, next up, man, really disappointing season from this guy, Jimmy Herget. He had a 1.19 score. That's good for a D-. I think that makes a lot of sense when it comes to Jimmy Herget's season. Yeah. Some of the thematic comments here, so if I could sum them all up into a few, go find 2022. lose the contacts or put your glasses back on.
Yeah.
And then fell off was the main theme there for Jimmy Herget. Mike, what's going on with Jimmy Herget? Why did he have such a struggling year this season?
The stats that we shared, and we did it earlier this year, were really interesting. He was somebody who just was not fooling batters like he was the year before. And he was throwing pitches at a rate that was different than he was in 2022. And maybe it was the glasses, maybe it was the pitch clock, who knows what it was. But remember, he was with a couple other teams and has kind of bounced around. And so the Angels, lucked into him with him pitching so well last season. Johnny, remember the offseason, everybody was like, and we were in that category too. Hey, is Jimmy going to close? Right?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have an answer to that.
Yeah, we didn't have an answer to that. You're right. I'm glad he didn't, because he really struggled this year.
It's funny about Jimmy Herget and even guys like Chris Davinsky, and you might even make the case, we're going to talk about him in a minute, but like Matt Moore, you've got guys like Herget and Davinsky and maybe even Jacob Webb by extension, who they really find themselves for a while. And I think there's just guys that can come out of the bullpen and be really good for like Herget was pretty good all through 2022. It felt like the Angels unlocked something in him, but perhaps, Mike, it's not so much they're unlocking anything. It's that, hey, this guy has a pretty short shelf life in the sense that he can fool guys for about 5 months.
Yeah.
And then he'll get figured out. And I'm afraid to say it. Maybe that's Esty. Hopefully, like what you said, he can come around and fix some of those things and apply the application of what he needs to implement. But again, like Davinsky too, like a good 6 weeks or so of like, hey, this guy's got it. And sometimes I think that's just kind of the nature of being a bullpen guy, a reliever. Yeah. Let's talk about somebody who found it again in 2022 with the Rangers and then had it again this season with the Angels. That's Matt Moore, Mike. A 2.87 score gets him a B+. Comments, kind of the consensus here, where the best bullpen arm, bring him back is another one. And we want more. Of course we want more. Give me more. Really, just as a lefty and not even just like doing the lefty thing, he was good against both sides of the plate and somebody you could really rely on even to like finish an inning and then do another inning right after that, or maybe take 2 innings. Somebody that we were really thrilled to have this season. Unfortunately, he was claimed originally by the Guardians. Then he went to Miami after that. Couldn't be on the playoff roster.
Nope.
But he did help them get there in a sense. So that's how he finished his season. Mike, your thoughts on Matt Moore?
I'd give him an A, Johnny, and I would have him back in a heartbeat. And he had a couple of moments where, I don't want to say he imploded, but he had a couple of moments where he struggled.
Yeah,
those
that's
moments.
Any reliever.
Well, that's the thing, though. Those moments were magnified because everybody else was struggling around him, and so and then Moore was so good that when he struggled, it was shocking, right? Like, wait a second, weren't we up in this inning? How did we get down with Matt Moore? And so I would have him back in a heartbeat. I think he is a great piece to have in this bullpen.
I agree. All right, somebody who was kind of a swing man. He did get some starts this season, but we predominantly saw him out of the bullpen, and that was Jaime Barria. He got a score of 1.21. That's good for a D- grade. Comments said bullpen only, like pick a lane basically, or what's his role? What's it going to be? What has it been? And then somebody, kind of a consensus there was time to go. Like let's move on from Jaime Barria. Mike, your response to those comments, this grade about Jaime Barria?
I think that he goes into the Andrew Wantz category. He's a depth piece when we need some extra help. He's still a young guy, so maybe he can figure it out. But there were high hopes for him in 2019 when he came up and really pitched well, and he just hasn't been able to figure it out. But the Angels haven't figured out what they want to do with him, and so I'm on board with him staying with this team and identifying his role. I wouldn't get rid of him just yet because of his age, but I think that he's somebody that they got to figure out what they want to do with him because right now he's really scuffling.
And I don't think it helps to have him start and come out of the pen. I think if he had a defined role, which we saw last year, he was strictly out of the bullpen in 2022. And was really great out of the bullpen and gave the Angels some length when the starters would crap the bed basically on the mound. Like Jaime Barria came in and picked up the pieces. And so if they just gave him a defined role, I think it'd be really helpful. Mike, unfortunately, I said it a few times this season, say nice things about Aaron Loup, Well, nobody had anything nice to say about Aaron Loup. He got a 0.95 score with a grade worth an F. Some of the main comments here were unreliable. He was bad when it mattered, which I think is significant. There were a few times, I think, this season where he got some opportunities to really show out. And I think those were the times I said, say nice things about Aaron Loup.
Right.
And then this one really, I think it hits your feelings, my feelings, everybody's feelings. It's been a long 2 years of Aaron Loup. What's your response to this grade, these comments?
I think the grade is accurate, but I do think the grade is influenced by emotion because we expected Aaron Loup to be Matt Moore, right? When he came over, we thought, wow, this is such a great signing. And it was because he had a less than 1 ERA when we signed him. And so I think that he just fell apart. Maybe he's getting older. Maybe he's getting figured out. Although I think with the pitching philosophy in Anaheim, and he mentioned it, there are some things that didn't necessarily line up with his gifting and his ability, right?
Yeah, because if you go back and look at that 2021 season and previous years, there wasn't really any indication of like regression. It was like, oh, he's not doing that well anymore. Oh, he did this really well in 21, but that's going away in 22. Not really anything that screamed at you that Aaron Loup was going to struggle so bad in Anaheim. Again, I go back to our conversation about extension. I go back to that conversation about his sinker and what that meant. Props to him for recognizing that maybe he could, get in better shape and perform better, which I think actually did help him this season. Because when he got hurt and came back, he was a much different Aaron Loup than he was at the beginning of the season.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Remember, every dayers, we are going to be here on Friday for Fan Mail Friday. So get us your questions. Reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. And you can send us a voicemail. Keep it about 30 seconds. We would love to hear your questions there. And the voicemail number is in the description below.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Mike, we've covered the starting pitchers. We've covered the bullpen. And tomorrow, we're getting into the infield, aren't we?
Yes, we are. I'm excited to talk about that because I think some of our future stars are in that infield, and we're going to talk about each one of them tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to that conversation, and we hope you'll come back and join us again. Again, all the graphics you saw on today's show, or if you're on the audio side and you want to check them out, they're going to be on our Twitter page at Locked On Angels, and they'll be on Instagram at Super Halo Bros. Give those a little like and share them if you would. I worked really hard on those, okay? So I'd love to get them out there. All right, friends, thanks for being here with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here, and that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Angels.
Aaron Loup got a F. I think that's how everybody responded to him this year.
Big F.